very first potential vice presidential pick for Donald J. Trump. You ready? A governor by the name of Ron DeSantis. Okay, all right. Let it sit. 866-95-PATRIOT. What do you think? Vice President Ron DeSantis. I think enough time has passed. Let bygones be bygones. I don't really know what bygones are, actually, but I get the expression. All right, here's the case for Ron DeSantis, I think. Ron DeSantis is the only person, along with Vivek, at the very beginning, who defended Trump when the feds raided Mar-a-Lago. That's the first thing. Second, Trump wrote on Truth Social just a couple weeks ago. He said, "I'm very happy to have the full and enthusiastic support of Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida." He didn't say DeSanctimonious, just Ron DeSantis. "We had a great meeting yesterday, arranged by mutual friend Steve Witkoff at his beautiful Shell Bay Club in Hollywood, Florida. The conversation mostly concerned how we could work together closely to make America great again. Also discussed was the future of Florida, which is fantastic. I greatly appreciate Ron's support in taking back our country from the worst president in the history of the United States. November 5th is a big day." Seems like the men have buried the hatchet a little bit. What's the background of that expression? Buried the hatchet. I'll look that up later. All right, second thing. Or third thing. It's politics. I was talking to my wife yesterday. I was like, oh, but what about, how hard they went at each other the other day? And she's like, oh, whatever, it's politics. I don't care about your past grudges. Trump the other day was asked about why he didn't prosecute Hillary when he won in 2016. And he's like, listen, I was at an MMA fight the other day, and these guys hate each other for months. They hate each other for months, and then they beat the living daylights out of each other, and then the fight's over, and they're hugging and kissing in the middle of the ring. He's like, that's politics. Just get over it. Okay, I'll give you another one. This is another case for DeSantis. DeSantis did a fine job, if you remember, in that debate against Gavin Newsom. And Gavin Newsom's going to be the next Democratic candidate in 2028. And we need someone who can go against Newsom in 2028. So I think there's a reason to elevate DeSantis, if this properly elevates DeSantis, to put him in a good position to take down Newsom, because that's who it's going to be. All right, so those are my pros for DeSantis. 866-95-PATRIOT. Take a couple phone calls about Ron DeSantis, Vice President. See what you think. Is it Elliot in Illinois? What's going on, Elliot?
Hey, man. Good morning. Love your show.
Thanks, brother. What do you think? Vice President Ron DeSantis.
I thought I read something or heard something that the president from Florida, the running president,
yes,
couldn't have a vice president from the same state. They couldn't reside in the same state.
Yes. Thank you. I should have said that. I'm sorry. Let me speak to that. But real quick, putting that aside, which I hope to do in the next minute, what do you think about Ron DeSantis as vice president?
It would be, I think it'd be great. Awesome. Great choice.
Okay. Let me, Elliot, let me speak to that. I appreciate it. All right. So here's the deal. It's Article 2, Section 1. The short of this is it's not a big deal. All right, here we go. All right, here it is. Here's what it says. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for two persons, of whom one at least shall not be inhabitant of the same state with themselves. So the conclusion is, the Constitution says, the electors can't vote for Trump as president and DeSantis for vice president if they're both from the same state. So if you're an elector in Florida, all right, you can only vote for Trump for president or DeSantis for vice president. So you got to pick one. So if it's a close election, then of course you're going to vote for Trump to make sure he's the president, but you can't vote for DeSantis to be vice president, which means the vice president may not get to 270 votes. In which case, the choice of who's going to be the vice president would go to the Senate, which the Democrats control, and they could name Kamala vice president or something like that. I don't even know what that. I guess they would just name. I guess they can name whoever they wanted or whatever. Anyway, there's no need to get all worked up about it. We don't need to go down the road of what would happen. It's a very easy fix. Dick Cheney left Texas in 2000 to go to Wyoming so he could be the vice president for fellow Texan George W. Bush. Trump could move to New Jersey, or you know what I mean? He just declares, I live in New Jersey now, and the problem solved. DeSantis could technically move to another state. I know for a fact that, are you with me? So it doesn't say that the president and the vice president can't be from the same state. It says electors of that state can't vote for two people from their state. That's what that says. I believe. If anyone wants to say this later, you're way off. But I'm pretty sure that's what that is. I know for a fact that if you're a senator in Florida, you can live in another state and still be Senate. You just have to be a resident of that state when you're elected. But then you can move to another state. That's for senator. I imagine the same is for governor. I guess you could. I know that the qualification to be a governor in Florida is you just have to have lived in that state for the previous 7 years before you're elected, but it doesn't say anything about whether or not you can move away while you're governor afterwards. My point is, that's not a reason to not pick the best person for the job. If you think that DeSantis is the best person for the job, there's an easy workaround for it, which leads me to person number 2, which would be, or my option number 2, which is Marco Rubio. But we'll talk about Marco in just a second. Let's go to Dan, who's in Vermont. Dan, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Speaking from the People's Republic here. I love Ron DeSantis. He was my guy earlier, but the challenge is the 6-week abortion ban in Florida, and that'll just, people will go nuts on that because they'll just fire up all the suburban moms, every woman under the age of 40. It's just, right now, nobody's got a reason to vote for Biden at all, and this will just whip them into a frenzy, whereas Trump has been doing a nice job of triangulating and, being political. So we got to win, unfortunately. So.
Yeah, Dan, I appreciate that. That's an interesting calculus. Speaking of abortion, there is a Supreme Court case. There's a couple Supreme Court cases that are coming out. The big one, of course, is the Trump immunity question. Is Trump immune from crimes he committed in the White House while president? But there's actually 2 more abortion cases that are going to come out here in the next, I don't exactly know the timeline, probably next few weeks, that will whip people up as well. Let's take, that's Ron DeSantis. We'll do another negative. I guess that's a negative, that previous call on Ron. We'll go to Tom, who's in Illinois. Tom, how are you?
Wow, good morning.
To you. Ron DeSantis, vice president. What do you think?
I believe Ron DeSantis is bought and paid for by Ken Griffin of Citadel Securities, who's one of the most evil people, unmatched by anyone on the Democrat side.
Yeah, I don't, Tom, I appreciate it. I don't know enough about that. I will research on that one. I remember hearing DeSantis speak against that as, here's a thing I did that guy didn't like. So I'm not bought and paid for because I specifically signed this piece of legislation which hurts him. I don't remember all the backstory to that. I don't know if that matters as much for a vice president, does it? Does it matter as much for vice? Do you think Trump's going to sell out to Ken Griffin or whoever that guy is? I don't know if that. Maybe that calculus can apply to him being the president, during the primaries. But I don't know if that works as your vice president. All right, so there's Ron DeSantis. Didn't get as jazzed up as I thought maybe people would be with Ron DeSantis. Okay, all right. Marco Rubio seems to be high on the list. Marco Rubio. Let me throw Marco Rubio out there because this is a name I haven't heard in 5 years. I haven't heard Marco Rubio talk in 5 years. I'm sure he's talked. I haven't heard him talk. And I'm quite surprised that his name is being thrown around there by Trump. It's at the short list. Marco Rubio. Is he still in the Senate? I don't even know what he's doing. So speaking of making amends, they've made amends from what happened 8 years ago. Remember all the talk about small hands and stuff like that. But same thing with Marco. He could. So here, how about this? Marco, check this one out. Marco, if he's vice president, he can move to another state. Then they win. He's vice president. And then DeSantis could put Byron Daniels. Is that it? Byron Daniels, is that his name? Byron Donalds into the Senate seat. So that could be a nice musical chairs right there. I haven't heard from Marco Rubio forever until the other day. And this is on, all right, check this out. This is Breitbart.com. 62% of registered voters say, this is a CBS News poll, 62% of registered voters say they would back, quote, a new national program to deport all undocumented immigrants currently living in the United States. Deportation. 62% of registered voters support mass deportation. That's unbelievable. How about this? 53% of Hispanics support it. 53% of Hispanics support a mass deportation program. 60% of independents as well. So here's Marco speaking to that a couple weeks ago.
To deport the more than 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country, it would be the largest deportation operation in American history. Do you support that plan?
11 million. That's an outdated. That was the number 10 years ago. We're talking upwards of 20, 25, maybe 30 million. Well, There's been almost 10 million people that have entered this country unlawfully in the last 3 years.
To the question, would you support it?
The number varies big time. I mean, it's another 9 to 10 million people just in the last 3 years. The answer to your question is yes. We cannot absorb 25, 30 million people who entered this country illegally. They're here illegally. What country on earth would tolerate that? We don't even know who most of these people are. They talk about vetting them with what? They're coming from nations that don't even have document systems in many cases. Yes, we are going to have to do something, unfortunately. We're going to have to do something dramatic to remove people from this country that are here illegally, especially people we know nothing about. But 10 million, 11 million, that was the number 15 years ago. Today, it's upwards of probably 25 to 30 million, maybe more.
Senator, here's what you said about Donald Trump's mass deportations proposals in 2016. Take a look.
I don't think it's reasonable to say you're going to round up and deport 11 million people. I don't think it's a plan that works. I don't think that's a realistic policy.
That was 2015.
So why have you changed your mind now?
Because the issue has completely changed. When I said that, and back in 2013, when I was involved in immigration reform, we had 11, 12 million people that had been here for longer than a decade. Now we've had almost that number in the last 3 years alone from all over the world, including people that I believe are terrorists, people that I believe are going to conduct terrorist attacks in this country if given the opportunity, certainly people that were criminals in their home country. This is a completely different, this is not immigration. You asked me about immigration. This is mass migration. Mass migration. This is an invasion of the country. And it needs to be dealt with dramatically. And by the way, I'm not a big poll follower, but polls show most Americans agree with us on this.